Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to edition 19 of Food Safety Fridays. It's great to have you with us here today for our regular Friday webinar. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Emma Weston, the teacher and industrial advisor at the University of Nottingham. Emma's going to be with us today talking about teaching techniques to embed scientific principles and food safety. Basically, at the University of Nottingham, they have a food science degree, and they prepare students for real life work. They like to call it oven ready graduates, that's their term. So they give them a lot of practical experience along with the theory. And the teaching techniques that they use there are very innovative, and Emma's going to be sharing those with us today. And I'm sure through those techniques that we hear about today, we'll be able to apply some of them in our own organisations, in our workplaces. So we're really looking forward to that. I'd like to say thanks to the sponsors. You can see them on the screen there: Trace Analytics, IFS, FSSC and Safe Food 360. These great organisations help us to bring you these opportunities for weekly education free of charge to you. So thanks very much to the speakers. I just want to say thanks to attendees for answering the survey. In the sign up now, I'm putting surveys, different surveys, and I did ask for feedback about what kind of subjects you'd be interested in perhaps having for further webinars. And that's great feedback you've been provided, because that will help shape next year's programme, because hopefully this programme will carry on into 2016. So thanks very much for that. So if you do see those little surveys popping into the registration page, please do answer those, because it does help us, and listen to your voice to help shape the programme for you, to help to make it better for you. So I can see Emma's with us. So hi, Emma. Nice to have you with us today.
Hello. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to your presentation. I've been working with you this week, and we've had a few challenges with the technical things, but the presentation is looking really great. So excited about that.
Yeah, I'm too.
Okay, so we'll be back with you shortly. I'm just going to talk about next week's webinar. Okay. Next week, Ruth Bell is back with us again. Ruth did a webinar earlier in the year. Ruth's senior consultant from AF Associates, and next week the subject is allergen management supporting your business. And you can see in the pop-ins tab there that you can actually register directly from the sidebar there. So please do that. Otherwise, when we send the emails, you can also register through that. So that'll be a great webinar, because we've not done anything on allergens, and that is a real hot topic at the moment. Okay, I think we're ready now for Emma's presentation. Just one thing, it is being recorded. The slides will be available. It normally takes a couple of days, and we send that out to you, so just be a bit patient. If there are any technical problems, there is the link at the top there to go and watch on YouTube. It's sometimes better to watch on YouTube. The only thing is you won't be able to be involved with the chat and the polls and things like that. So try your best to stay with us here, but if not, you can use the YouTube link. Okay, so over to you, Emma. I'll be back for the Q&A later.
Thanks very much, Simon.
Okay.
Hello. Right, welcome everybody. I'd like to present a little bit today about how we teach our food science students at Nottingham. Simon and I were laughing earlier. I think my title is probably a little bit pompous, really. It could be a little bit street. So I very much hope you find the presentation a little bit more relevant and catchy, because it really is something I feel that if you work in the food industry, I can give you some really good techniques and ideas that you can do some innovative training for your staff. Right, so if I do want to start off, the outline of the presentation is very 5 points, but 5 points, but 2 of them are highlighted. I'm just going to briefly touch on what we think we want from graduates and what you might want from graduates as employers, and how we embed those skills into higher education teaching. And then I'm going to spend the predominance of the time talking about how these innovative techniques can be used in your workplace for your training. And I'll showcase one particular teaching method And that will be worked on throughout the time in the second half of the presentation. And at the end, there's a possibility you can get involved in a graduate skills for employability project that I'm doing later in the year. About myself, some of you might not know what the University of Nottingham is. It's obviously a UK-based university, as I've mentioned in the title, but actually we have 3 campuses. The main one is clearly in the UK, but we have a campus in Ningbo in China and also one in Malaysia, and have done for a number of years. So we are an international university, and we're very, very proud of that. And within our university, we have the Division of Food Sciences, and that's where I work. So before carry on with my presentation, I just wanted to start a poll and ask a question. And it's really to all of you. What do you want from food science graduates? So all of you employ people either straight from university or later on in their career. What type of personal skills do you think that they should have to be successful in their career in the food industry? And we've put a number of options up on the poll. So if you want to choose your top one, it might be all of them, but if you choose your top one, that would be really good. Thanks.
Okay, so the question is, what skill is most important for food science technical graduates to be successful in their career in the food industry? As Emma said, there's a number of options there, and I can see the votes coming in. So we'll just let that run for 30 seconds or so, just to see what the scores on the doors are, and then we'll review those answers. If you can't answer the poll, if you can't see it for any technological reason, just type in the chat box what you think your main attribute is. Okay, so please go ahead.
It's really interesting, actually. So it's actually moved around. It's a little bit like Eurovision Song Contest, actually. But the but the ones that seem to be vying for top place seem to be self-management and organisation, positive attitude and initiative, and problem solving. And they're all really, really strong needs. I definitely agree with that. And I think that's something which hopefully when we go through some of the ideas as you go in the next 50 minutes, you'll actually get some ideas as to how you can maybe use some of those ideas into your own workplace, but also I'll give you some proof that we're doing it within our teaching for our graduates.
Right, I'll end the poll there. Wow, it worked, Emma.
I know, I'm really impressed.
Fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, that's great. Okay, back to you then, Emma.
Yeah, so we've got our top 3. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so really what we do at Nottingham and we're passionate about is making sure that we've got the science brain in our students. That's the important bit. That's what they really need to do a degree in food science. But we make sure that they've also got the skills to apply the science to the job. And that's a really, really increasing important part of coming out as a graduate in today's society. I'll just briefly go over the fact that we did a massive review from 2007 onwards. We do a 5-year review with employers and students and graduates. And at 2007, the employers were coming back to us and saying our students had the science, ticking the box, but they didn't have the work skills. And there's no time for people to learn over a number of years nowadays. People have to perform effectively straight away, minimal time, and they need to take on accountability quite fast as well. So we reflected on that and we started looking for active learning tools. At this stage, I'll just explain what I mean by active learning. And we use it a lot, obviously, in teaching. Passive learning is more like lectures and things like that. Active learning is where the student is actually involved in the session of whatever they're doing. So it doesn't have to be necessarily talking to other people, but it can be something online, it can be something on a one-to-one basis, but it is involving the student. So we started looking for more tools to help us improve and develop. And we looked at working environments. What type of environments do our graduates want to work in? I could have put a nice slide up of people all working in a team together in a factory, but they don't just work in factories. They do have to work independently. They have to be prepared to do desk work and work hard and independently on that, but also working on their own in factories and having the motivation and confidence to go out there and do audits or checks or whatever else they need to do. But obviously there's a picture in there to remind you that they do have to work collaboratively, gain knowledge from other experienced colleagues, ratify the information they get, and come to decisions and take mature calls on things and see the bigger picture. So there's a lot of skills they need to have. And let's not assume they've all naturally got them. We have to develop them not only as students, but also after they leave. And all of your staff will be in the same position, not just graduates. I missed out the big slide, which I'm sure you'd expect from something from a Food Safety Friday lecture. They will have to work in crisis situations and manage difficult incidents. There'll be things like unusual customer complaints. There will be identification of food safety issues they're going to have to deal with, crisis management, traceability. All of those require working with people, working under time and stressful situations with pressure. And they need to be able to make decisions around all of that environment. So there's a lot in there that we're expecting of our graduates if they want to succeed in your workplace. So by we here, I mean all of us, because I believe that those that teach food science are still part of the industry. What do we want from food science graduates? We want the science, that's a given, but we want them to be able to apply the science. And really in today's society, they also have to have generic professional skills in order to be a good manager and a good director for the future. So in Nottingham, we did a massive curriculum review, and around that time they employed me and also involved some external support from different people as well. But fundamentally, I was brought in 2009, straight from working for 14 years in manufacturing in various roles. So that's my background. I'm a technical manager, technical director from many, many moons ago, and lots of experience in how things really work in the food industry. So therefore, I could put that context into our teaching. We've included new modules to include more opportunities to use the science in real situations. And we've also, industry were really helpful in supplying us scenarios to work on in all sorts of things in terms of problem solving and NPD and things like that. And we've also specifically, knowing what we need for today's market, focused on getting employability skills and professionalism there for our students. So that's my aim. Simon mentioned it earlier. It's my sort of tagline that I use everywhere. I sort of came out for me a bolt in the blue one day. I produce oven-ready graduates. They're ready to go out there and start working in the heat of the industry. And that's what I'm passionate about. And I hope my students are the proof of the pudding when they go out. So that's one of our students, Sam. He's now graduated and he was at Mars at the time. You specifically embed oven ready in higher education. We've gone down a number of streams, some of them more obvious than others. We've got food safety training and factory tours, and obviously they do lots of science behind all of this. The bold area of problem-based learning is what I'm going to focus on later, so we'll go back to that. And they also have an optional year's placement, which they can do for a full year. In their final year, they do MPD, and also they have specific professional skills training. And I'll go through each of those and just talk about how you might be able to use some of these. You want staff in all departments to react effectively to investigations, incidents, to crises, and have the knowledge and skills to be proactive and try not to be reactive all the time. Last week we were talking about food safety culture. The words you used a lot, and I think they're worthwhile striving towards. And the more we can all work together to get that, the better we will all be. And I've got some suggestions at each stage of the next few slides to maybe you can think about. So first of all, year one, we get them thinking about food safety straight away. That's a picture of our new food hall. It's only been there a few years. We're very proud of it, obviously. It looks lovely in that picture. And we obviously, in building that in 2011, we decided to overhaul everything we did, how we did it, and how people behaved. And so I rewrote all of the operating standards and procedures, and we have a very weighty personnel procedure, which is weighty because we do everything in there. We manage every allergen, we manage every food type, we manage every risk. We have visitors, we have staff, we have students, we have PhD research. So we have a real mixing point. We're actually worse off than the rest of you. No matter what you think, we're worse. Okay, in terms of risk. So we have a lot to do. So we have to do some very focused training. But coming out of that, the students that get trained in this should be far more prepared for working anywhere, really. So that's the first thing that we do with our students. And it reflected back on looking at the students there in that picture. Do you think your induction training is as good as it could be? And the reason I ask that is because students are very good at telling us how they feel about things. They're very, very confident. And if they don't understand something, they'll go, why? Why do I need to do that? What's the point of me putting that hat on? What's the point of me washing my hands? My hands were clean earlier. So answering the why and including that prompt within your training might really help you get some buy-in from your staff. It's human nature not to do things unless you can see a reason for it. And since I've been teaching in industry, I've realized that answering the why can be the difference between someone doing the right thing and someone not bothering. So that's my first point. It's not specific training, but it's something I've reflected on after being here for 6 years. We also take them around factories, and we have an opportunity to do that. We have lots of links across the UK where we take people around different types of factory, different sizes. And I really enjoy taking them around. In fact, I'm taking them around to 4 factories next week, the first years. So they get a lot of understanding and grounding there. Really good stuff for them. And really good for their preparation for their further studies and for choosing where they feel they might want to be in the future. But how often do your staff actually see around the factory? How often do your staff understand the different parts of the processes in your factory? Do all your staff even get a proper tour? And when do they? And I'm asking those questions because I'm trying to prompt some thoughts in you that maybe to challenge the status quo as an ex-technical manager who maybe followed a few routines myself over the years, and really just thinking about whether or not you can align with other factories in your business for cross-site visits, making sure every member of staff sees the factory, not just the people that work in the factory. Wouldn't it be much more beneficial when things go wrong that everyone can visualize what goes on in there? And maybe if you do supplier audits, you can take members of staff with you occasionally so that they can see other different facilities, and it doesn't make any more difference, no more mileage, no more time potentially. And then you get some depth and content into the minds of your staff. And this is again me reflecting on what I'd probably do now if I had my factory back again. You'd always expect us to teach students food manufacturing processes, otherwise we'd clearly not be doing our job. And that's some of our students working on the retort, second year students from last year. They also go out in industry as well. So all of that gets embedded into their brains before they come to you and start working across the world as graduates. And we try and give them the breadth that they need, but they have the time to do that there. And they get assessed against it. And clearly there's a motivation behind them to learn because of that. But in industry, do all your staff really understand your key manufacturing processes, or is it just dependent on where they've worked for the past 10 years or 15 years, or where they were first put and now they've been moved, or because they work in the office and they've never actually been in the factory and are scared to go in? So this links back to the factory tour, but it also links back to, wouldn't it be better if everyone understood the processes so that you have more heads to deal with investigations of contamination, more people to deal with traceability, understanding really where that paperwork goes, why you're cooking in an oven for this time, for this temperature, and really might be able to help spot and deal with things better. So embedding those process skills might really, really help. Then looking at MPD. Every business has got a different level of MPD. I've worked in businesses where we have huge amounts and you can't breathe for new launches. And I've also worked in places where, you know, I've made a Jaffa cake for 6 years and it never changed at all. So we've all worked in different size businesses, and so are you at the moment. But MPD, or existing product development, EPD, is actually encompassing so many different parts of our food industry in everything that they have to do. And this is a list of what we expect the students to output on when they're working on their MPD project. And I thought I'd leave that list there to show you that just the sheer volume of what maybe your MPD team or your technical team work on when they're doing that. And reflecting back on that when I used to manage MPD teams as well, why don't you do something in your industry, in your setting? And mock MPD activity might be a fantastic thing to get a mixed team together to understand all of the implications of what goes on in your business. So you could take an existing product and change it, ask them to change it slightly. You could take a completely different product and just taking a light touch, not too much effort, but asking them to say, make this biscuit gluten-free. And look at the costings, look at the timings, look at the processing changes, the packaging changes, the allergen management changing, and everything else. It might be something you could do which doesn't take much time to build, and the group that work on it will learn a lot about different aspects of the business in doing so, and with something maybe that they know a lot about in one particular area but not the others. It should be a great development tool, and it helps people see the whole picture. I won't carry on with this one for much longer, because obviously the professional skill side of things is something I'm sure you're teaching within your own businesses separately. But just to touch on the fact that we now have specific topics covered by internal and external visitors from industry, retailers, researchers, recruitment agencies, career services, coming in and talking to them about career opportunities. And this is really useful for our students, though clearly having people asking you about going to apply for jobs in your own business is probably not something you want to encourage. But the bottom part might be something for your own personal development for your teams, and thinking about self-reflection about what are they good at, and how you can position them in the future as to where they want to develop their careers. So I've put that one in to show what we do at University of Nottingham, but also just to maybe prompt a thought that sometimes it's good to reflect back on how your team are developing and where their passion seems to lie, and where their natural comfort areas seem to lie, and how they can develop things. But the bit at the bottom is becoming increasingly relevant, and maybe your team are going out to your conference or the odd workshop or training session. Networking is becoming increasingly more of a need state for all members of teams, no matter where you work. And in manufacturing, it's exactly the same. So just a reminder that network skills are now becoming more and more in demand. So back to that one I highlighted before, problem-based learning. Actually, a lot of you will be doing that, and you'll be dealing with problems on a daily basis. But what I'm going to talk about is maybe a method which is a bit more structured that you might want to use, which helps you easily set things up to do some training for whatever technique or knowledge you want to embed in your staff in a way within your manufacturing environment. Just a couple of extracts from our student handbooks, which sort of outline why we're doing it. It's something that we wrote in originally for the students, that employers seek graduates who are ready to perform straight away. They see PBL as a formative exercise and reflects accurately real life work, and therefore employers have been involved in developing this module, and that's the truth. That's where we are. But also a quote from industry that they believe it gives, this problem-based learning gives an insight into the types of skills help them in industry. So my challenge here is, if it helps people before they move into industry, it should help them while they're in it as well. So when you go back and look at this, if you're interested, and looking at the webinar later on, or seeing the slides, you can look at this in detail. But I've left it in there, and I won't touch on it in huge amounts of detail. But this is roughly how our process works at University of Nottingham, where students get together in pre-selected groups, and they work over a problem over 2 full days in total for the way we work it, and they are guided through it by a facilitator, and they have information given to them at set periods of time to mimic what happens in real life. So within that 2-day period, it could go over a month in the virtual world they're working in, and the problems vary, and we mix them across the whole of the module, so they do all different types of ones. But the assessments are clear. You're in university, you need to be assessed. But what they get assessed on might help you understand what you can get from it. We ask them to come back to us with what they think the issue really is, what the impact it might have on their business and the supply chain, what the possible causes of this issue are, and evaluate each one of them and why they've looked at them, and then what they conclude the final cause, the final issue must be, and put their money where their mouth is. And then what are the corrective and preventive actions they need to take to manage food safety or the quality of the business, but then also manage the business reputation. So they move into this virtual factory. It does happen every year. I never cease to be amazed about the fact that they genuinely do move into this virtual world. They get really absorbed into it. And I'll tell you later that actually it seems to work with people that work in real jobs as well. It's not just students. Again, this is a slide you can go back to if you're interested in all of this. But what we based our PBL on is the classic 7-jump process. There's a 7 in everything, or a 3, or a 12 nowadays. And this one's been going on for 20 years. And there's some references down there you can look at. Gisella's and ASA is a very good reference for PBL. And also there are plenty of others you can pull up from there. But basically, there are steps you go through, and you encourage the students to follow. And you have to make sure they do a thorough job. They don't just go for looking at where the answer is. They actually learn as they go. So you coach them through that, and you give them this process to follow, and you keep pushing it at them and asking them to go back and do it. And we've developed our own from this because we wanted it to work for students and work over a 2-day process and the type of assessments we want. But you can adapt it to wherever way you want to do it as well. But that's the main 7-jump process and some references, and we've got an adapted version there that we use to suit Nottingham. But your meetings could be all in a day, or you could split them up once a week or twice a week, or wherever you want, as long as it's not too separated apart. And your timescales can change depending on how you want this incident to happen. It can happen in a day or in a month. Students get given all sorts of information, mainly by paper. Why don't we do it virtually nowadays on our web system with all the information that we do? Actually, the students always want paper. Every year I ask them, every year they still want paper. And that's because they can all look at it, they can all share it, and they can write all over it. And I think that may be something that we'll still keep with, because it just seems to work to the human team nature. They work as a team together and start becoming very, very insular. Even if they're in 2 groups in the same room, they don't even listen to each other. It's quite surprising to watch. And they form this sort of war cabinet where they start really, you do this, I'll do that, I'll find this out. And that's what you should encourage if you were going to use it. And we give them plastic pieces of paper, or you can use whiteboards or something, where they share the information. And the whole ethos of this particular slide is to show you that it's about sharing. It's not one person having a piece of paper and not sharing it with other people, or finding out data and not sharing it with the rest of the group. That's the point of PBL. It's sharing the information and evaluating it. An example of the type of documents I build, you'll see at the top right, I have a whole virtual world of retailers, manufacturers. I've probably got about 35 different manufacturers now, loads of different suppliers, and 4 main retailers that I've made up in the past sort of 6 years. I'll probably end up being sectioned at one point, but eventually I will end up with a virtual Emma world of manufacturing. And I do that obviously to make sure it's anonymous, but also because I want the students to just really get engaged with the names of the companies they're working for and really get into it. And we put factory layouts out and process flows, because that helps them get in the factory. Now you can get in your own factory, you've got an advantage there. But I also build up documents, and from my own experience, I know they're not always perfect. So the documents I give them aren't always perfect. Things might be missing, they might be filled in correctly, they might be illegible. And I will carry on doing that, because they have to face that that's life until the world becomes perfect. There is a view that technical managers should be working hard to do themselves out of a job. I think we've still got plenty of life in that career, at least for a good few years. I also send faxes and emails and communicate things through that way, because it helps them see the context about, oh, a new complaint's come in, or some data's come in from the lab in terms of a new micro out of spec report. And I use faxes because actually they're a bit more colourful and a bit more interesting, but you normally would use emails and things like that. And you give those out in a timely way throughout the problem. Again, I've listed what we tell the students they'll get from this in terms of benefits. And actually, I was going to take a load of these out, thinking you wouldn't be relevant to you. But actually, a lot of those things you probably do want to infuse into your training, or into how you want your staff to develop. So there are things in there you might want to pull on and think, actually, yeah, I'd really like them to learn more about this, or I'd really want them to communicate better, or to deal with pressure better. Problem solving obviously is a key one. You might want them to do presentations at the end, and that's something they know they need to present, because they do a lot of retailer presentations, for example. Is PBL working? Yes, it definitely is. For us, it's working. It's very successful. I'm really proud of it. And I go around shouting about it with T-shirts all the time. But that's just some quotes that literally I pulled off the surveys from April this year, from our undergraduate students. They love it. They think it's useful. They think it's relevant for them getting a job and doing the job. And I think that always goes to help us be confident it works. But we get the feedback from the employers as well, that it really helps them be a better person for candidate for interview, but also when they get the job. It's the favourite module at the moment for the 3-year course, which we're really proud about. But over the years, we've been arguing with ourselves about whether we should integrate this into our training for external people. We do industry training. We do at Nottingham. We do a number of short courses over the year. And we've said, no, don't use PBL, because it would be condescending. Industry know how to manage problems. They don't need to be taught in that way. They just need to be told the answer. They don't really want to be given this type of scenario. It's all a bit sort of staged. But the more we've gone into it, the more we've talked about it, we thought, well, actually, people can always improve and working in teams. People can actually learn, and maybe in a different environment at university, it might be a way for them to stretch themselves. But also, if they're so good at it already, maybe that's the best way for them to learn about science and technology. So when they come to do a course on something to do with cereals, for example, then maybe it's a comfortable way for them to learn about it, working with other people on the course in a team environment to find out a problem and learn about that particular technology. And reflecting on the fact that most of manufacturing people are quite active, don't sit down for a long time listening, lecturing might not be the best way for them to really engage. So we need to mix it up a bit. So we decided to have a go. So we decided if we were going to do it, it had to be really realistic, because there was no point in pretending with people from industry, because they would just see it as fantastical and they would be switched off. So we really had to make it realistic to be engaging. So we tried it in autumn 2014, last year, in a meat science course. We had delegates that anyone can come along, but there were technical people and operations people for that particular course. And on the second day, they did a problem-based learning scenario, which I changed and adapted to make it fit into a day with sufficient and the right challenge for people from industry. And I put them in groups of 4, and they worked on the material. And they did group presentations for the outputs, because that was the most effective way within the time we had, and they were happy doing that. The feedback was really positive verbally, and there's some highlighted areas of some of the feedback we got via the usual course review systems that we have. They liked the problem solving, learning, and the group work. It helped them learn. It was a comfortable way for them to learn. And one thing I really liked, which I pulled out at the bottom, was one of the delegates, a technical lady, was saying actually it reminded her to actually look at information properly and not to see it the same as she saw it every single day, and actually to see it with a fresh pair of eyes. And I thought that was a good thing to think about. The past 2 weeks, there have been some excellent presentations on the Fridays, and Margaret talked about the 4 E's. And when I saw that presentation, I really started getting excited and seeing the link to what I was going to be doing. And we deliver some of those, the first 3, into our activity with these methods. So maybe this will help you deliver something if you're interested in what Margaret was talking about. And then last week, Britta was talking about the food safety culture and the 7 key practices. And within what we can deliver within PBL training, there's some safe environments for the staff to learn more about processes, investigations, teamwork and training. And it should help with communication and get all of those things, those boxes ticked. I did also note, though, however, in the comments that people were questioning, where do we get these problems to do these things? Where do we get these scenarios to do the examples? And I'll talk about that a bit later, because that stuck with me. So in industry, what could you use PBL for? New staff, I don't propose you do induction training by PBL. I don't propose they do problem solving to work out how to get into the factory. But I do think it might be useful for maybe technical people to understand about foreign body contamination and how they might look for contamination on a line, or how they might deal with a particular incident on a line if they're a QA, for example. So you could give them scenarios and get them to test bed them together, maybe with experienced staff or with a mixture of non-experienced staff, and get them to sort of do a safe practice run to see how they would deal with a contamination and what they would do, who they would communicate with, and what they would do, and how they would prevent it in the future. So that's one idea. And then we could talk about management training. I imagine you've probably done some type of problem solving in some away day somewhere, or some type of team building session with facilitators around and all that sort of thing in a hotel or something, or in the middle of a field. But when you do these things, they do this type of thing. It's problem solving, working in groups. So you can maybe do that internally, but crisis management training is crying out for problems. You give them a scenario and get them to work on it, give them tight time scales and put the pressure on and get people to deal with it. And you might have done this already, but if you haven't, have a think about doing something like that to prepare your teams to work in crises. And it might help you to identify and develop who's good at what, who's good at duties and particular roles that they could give, and a structure for who does what and where to prepare. It might also help you practice and check that things are working, like your communication systems, your phone systems, emails, systems access any time of the day or night, customer comms, etc. They always fail when you need them, so check them out with a PBL scenario. And also it might help with a new senior team, for example, for team development, get them all work together on something in a virtual way. Might be a good way for them to come together and start seeing each other and what they can do with each other. But let's get on to the technical bit, because I think that's the thing that obviously a lot of people listening on a Friday for. Contamination incidents. Okay, let's talk about one which is something which could be something like a toxin that's come in and it's above the legal limits in a material that you've brought in. You could actually turn that into something that a group traceability exercise, and then they present back where all the material's gone and how much will have to be recalled depending on how much is in products. And you could, again, add a timing to that to put pressure on. It would also actually be actually a tick in the box for any of your mock recall exercises that you have to do each year or every 2 years or whatever else you've committed to doing in your quality systems. So actually, there's a lot you could do in there. An example might be you're a rice miller, for example, and you've had a reported mycotoxin in a batch of rice that came in. What would you do? So you give them the scenario, you give them the amount of rice that's come in, the levels of the mycotoxin, and then the group can split up and find out where's it all gone. That's the first thing people do. But then when you find where's it all gone, it's left the building, and you can give them documentation that shows it's gone to certain customers. They can do traces on that. You could throw in an extra nasty and say that there's infant products in there because there's different constraints for maximum levels in infant products compared to normal products. And you can also then get another group looking at what went wrong. How did these mycotoxins get in my factory? And then talk about where they came from, what mycotoxins are, the risks attached to them, how you can prevent them happening in the first place and getting into the stock, but then also how you can prevent them getting into your factory and then being used. So there's lots that a team could all work on there together, and you could put time constraints on it, or you could just get them to learn more. But I like a bit of pressure. I think it's good. And then this is just a list of the type of things you could say I want to get out of it. So for this particular problem, I know from doing a similar problem with my students that I could tick all of those boxes if I wanted to, if that's what I wanted them to learn. You could tell them that's what you want them to do, or you could get them to find that out for themselves. It's your choice. But you could choose a few of them and focus on maybe the traceability exercise, or focus on the fact that no one knows about mycotoxins in your business. So let's find all about that. But maybe at the end, always make sure that they understand it's not just about dealing with the issue, it's stopping it happening again. We know that's key in technical. We know that's key in the supply chain. In terms of industry also, for technical ideas, micro is going to have to be in there. It can't not be. I haven't included allergens, but we could have done hundreds. But the next one I'm doing is micro. And thinking about contamination, and you get that awful lab report coming in, usually at 4 o'clock on a Friday, or at 7 o'clock on a Monday, or on a Sunday. It never happens middle of the day on a Wednesday. So when it comes in, how do you deal with it? A lot of the time you are dealing with them maybe regularly, but let's do one when it's out of the pressure zone and get your staff to work on it and learn and prepare and deal with how they would deal with it, maybe with new staff or staff that need refresher training, and work on how they would investigate it, what they would do, what the communications are, what the legal levels are, what customers expect. And an example could be, there's plenty out there, we all know that, but if you're in chill foods and ready to eat, listeria is probably not something you're particularly excited about. You might be used to working with it, but you're not excited about it. And you might have something with a chilled pot of, say, sandwich filler, mayonnaise and meat and vegetables. And it's come through and you've got a report. What do you do? And you might use a mixed team of people to not only do the usual paperwork trace and do some and work on that, investigate the cause of the issue. Is it the raw materials? Is it chicken? Is it the equipment? Is it the people? Is it the environment? Is it the floors? And everything else that you normally go into for that. People can be doing that. Other people, and sharing with the rest of the group. Other people can then be looking into some of the stuff they don't normally do. What is listeria? What risk does it cause to human health? Where does it come from? What's its normal prevalence? What different species are there and the risks attached to those? How is it tested? And maybe get everyone to share that with each other as well and get some learning so that it's not just reacting to a report rather than making a sensible evaluation of risk. And then finally, the other thing is maybe you can help prepare your staff, if they're not used to it, about how they would dialogue with customers and the type of decisions and risk assessments you have to do in these types of situations, because it's not always a straight recall, as we know. Another one, foreign bodies, of course. I've worked in ambient, and I know that was my biggest risk at the time. And many, obviously metal was my big one at the time, and plastic. So I've got plenty of experience of that one, and I can just pull ideas of those ones off the shelf without even thinking about it. But customer complaints can be a good source of using for dealing with, for pulling together a scenario. And picking typical customer complaints or pulling in new ones that you think might be relevant for the future would be good. You could start building on that and saying it happened at this time and at this place. It might be linked to a supplier, it might not. You might have an impact of an ingredient that then have they thought about the fact that sugar's actually used somewhere else in the factory, not just on the line that you found the problem. Should you be letting other people in the business know about it? They need to start considering all about this. But then also, you have a factory, I don't. So you could actually go in there and build up scenarios with pieces of kit for them to look at and investigate and find problems. This is really where you could come to your own in manufacturing, and I'm remarkably envious because I can't just wander into a factory and start contaminating it. You could do this with pieces of kit and getting them to work on them and fault find, and then asking them to risk assess the different types of material you find and exactly what they would do about and decisions they would make on the stock. You can build that into a large crisis. It's entirely up to you. These are the types of tools that I've used over the years in my own real life before I was teaching. And then also now when I'm embedding it with students, that's a typical one from about 20 years ago. There's loads of them out there on the internet. You can base an entire scenario about getting them to make sure they're using all of these every time they're working in those environments. So you could pull out a couple that are relevant to your business and make sure that they use them as a Bible. But that one I find particularly useful because it covers a lot of bases that people don't always think about, like rework and processing aids and things like that. Fourth one, technical ideas. For MPD development, we talked a little bit earlier about MPD and mock MPDs, but maybe you could do something where it went wrong. A failed product after launch, a week later or a month later, things are going wrong. Why are they going wrong? And the whole point of it might be for them to learn what they should have done better in order to make it sustainable after they walked away and left it to operations. So what did they not embed? What did they not do? What did they not see coming? And what did they not get right? So you can pull on all sorts of things on that one. And again, I have history of that myself, but it could be stability issues, it could be safety or just quality, rancidity, breakage if it's biscuits, color change. I've had that with beverages, packaging faults, and then you could, of course, include micro as well if it was something that was relevant to you. But this cries out for a problem-based learning approach. So if you were going to do this, how would you include it in your company? You need to build them up in advance. You can't just, you might want to do it after you've reacted to a particular problem and say people need to know that for the future, but build them up when you get some time, get someone to build them up and work on them. Build up realistic documentation. You can do that as well as I can, if not better, because you're in there. And you might want to do problems which aren't linked to your own factory and do different documentation, but make time release packs ready to use that they literally every hour or every period you want to do, every 2 hours or every 4 hours, you give them more information and say, it's now this time, this information has now happened. We've now had these results. Find staff good at facilitating group work. I would recommend someone facilitates to keep the group working well together and help them use that dynamic of group work and to actually start sort of bouncing ideas off each other and consolidating them. I would recommend that, and there's always someone that's good at facilitating group work within your business. Do as long slots as you like, 2, 4, 8 hours, you decide. Put the training on the agenda again. I've put that in there because it's a very trite term. We're always trying to get training more and more and more, and sometimes it's the thing that gets cut from budgets. But this is internal. It doesn't cost money in terms of buying people in to come in or buying lots of equipment or books. These you could build yourself. So the only cost is time. And refresher training, Simon and I were talking about this only yesterday. It would be a fantastic tool for doing something different in terms of your refresher training, which is something I know most of you are required to do for your systems. But there are challenges. There always are, and there is always maybe a grumpy face, and it could be the manager, it could be the people doing the problems. One we get with students is some students don't like working in groups. We explain to them that is part of normal routine life, and part of our teaching reflects the mixture of things you have to do in life. And we work through with them and encourage them, and there are lots of things I can talk about how we mentor them and get them to trust and work. But what I would say in industry is actually you'd be very hard pressed to actually... are you?
No. fine.
You're right, it's fine. Sorry, I just saw something flash across the screen.
It's fine. No, it's just me.
Something in terms of working in groups. They have to work in groups, and that's that. In terms of what's the point, go back to that why from the induction training and personnel training. Why do they have to do it? So just reflect on that. Make sure they understand why they need to know more about listeria, why they need to know more about traceability, why they need to know more about working in teams and crisis because it didn't work well last time. And in terms of time, these are virtual problems. You can switch them on and off. So if you have a bad week, you could move dealing with the next part of the problem to the next week. So there is that flexibility there that you might be able to use. Just to highlight all different types of documents you could use. And within those, you could make them up yourself, pull them off the web, specifications and stuff. I pull in all sorts from all sorts of people. But when it comes down to it, highlight key bits in there. Don't highlight them, get them to find them, sorry, that actually give them guidance as to what's been going wrong, where the problems might be. So you're starting to lead them onto the path of where the root cause is. Sources of scenarios. This is something I've just pulled in because I remember talking I remember the comments from last week. There was a couple of comments going like, yeah, talking about ideas and using them for training people. Where do we get these ideas from? Where I've only got the ones that I know about in my factory and they all know about them anyway. But try and go back to your past information. It's amazing how much you can remember that maybe your staff don't, and other people might not remember, or new teams of people definitely won't. But also all of your teams and the people that work in your factory, most of them probably have worked in the food industry before. And if they have, they've probably got grey hair like I have. And if they have, they'll probably remember past problems. So if you start pulling out and teasing out, I've done it with my colleagues and ex-colleagues all over the place and just said, oh God, do you remember that? And what went wrong there? And start teasing them out and start building them into something a bit bigger and a bit more relevant. And you can add extra bits to them. You've got industry networks in whatever country you live in and work in. You will have your own industry networks and associations, or what products you make or what retailers you supply. So share ideas with them and bring that up in the agenda and say, okay, let's start sharing ideas. You can then share the scenarios and share the work and use them in each of your factories. I also take information from the media. I get FSA alerts on my text messages, the same as lots of people in the UK. There's two that came in this afternoon alone. One of them was about, well, we've had a couple in this week about uncooked prawns in a cooked prawns packet. We've had one about broken bottles. We've had one about, I think it's an allergen one as well. I'm just looking at my phone as I'm talking here. You can take one of those and build it and make it bigger and make it into something that you could build. And the USA have got food safety news. They've got these types of briefings all over the world that you could use, or use the ones from other countries. And mock them up and think broad. If you're working in a biscuit factory, you can use ones about cake, you can use ones about bread, because the raw materials are similar. So don't just compartmentalize yourself. And also think about whether, I just threw it at Simon and see what he thought, whether or not the IFSQN could actually have a pool of ideas that people could take and bank and build. And that might be something that we can think about for the future. So just getting towards the end here, we're doing our bit, we think. It's part of the supply chain of the food industry, because I believe we are part of that. We're delivering you good graduates, the same as you get deliveries of ingredients. And we're doing our bit. We're giving them the science. We're giving them the ability to apply the science in real life situations. And we're making them professional as well, so that they can represent you positively and be an asset to your company and to the food industry in the future and make great careers. So we're producing oven-ready graduates. We're confident of that. But see what you can do, because that's only part of the journey of staff. And some staff don't go to university. See what you can do with staff once they're embedded in the industry. Build up scenarios that might be useful, and actively include this type of active training in your workplace. I'm using active there because this is the point. People don't want to sit down and be told what to do. And admittedly, you've listened to me for an hour, so there we are. But actively, people engage more when they're interacting with each other. And they learn more from doing that, and they stay awake. I mean, believe you me, I'm a higher education teacher, and they actually learn better. So producing effective staff from doing this will give you effective working teams at the same time. So I've got an open question now, just to finish off before my last slide. What would be a key topic, now thinking about what we've I've been through and presented today, what would be a topic that you just think off your head straight away? Oh, we could do. I really would like to do a PBL because there's knowledge, there's gaps, there's areas, there's problems in this particular area of science or food safety, or there's particular techniques. I think working in a team would really help my staff working on a particular aspect. If you want to put any comments in, that'd be really interesting to see.
Okay, so just type in your comments, attendees. So out of today, problem-based learning, so active learning, getting a team together in your organisation to work on a problem, an area of weakness or improvement. What scenario could you do? And Emma's give quite a few examples of different scenarios. Which one would you fancy doing? Which one do you think you might need to do?
Oh gosh, I've gone off.
Is anybody going to type something in?
I don't know if anyone's there.
Just while they're doing that. Well, in fact, they're coming in now. Kelly's changing to a food safety culture.
Yeah.
How I see, I've been jotting down things, scribbling things down while you've been speaking, Emma. And one thing is, a company often is silo-based. You know, you have these silos,
yes.
And within the silos, let's call them departments.
Yeah.
There's expertise and knowledge, a high degree of expertise and knowledge, but a lack of understanding of other departments, other silos, other processes. And this type of thing helps to break down those barriers and makes it more of a process-based organization where people have the knowledge, the breadth of knowledge, the depth of knowledge across the business.
Yeah.
And that then strengthens the internal customer and supplier chain.
Yes.
Which then delivers more value to external customers as well.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you also get more cohesive. Your message to your customers is better and to your suppliers because you're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And you're also not dependent on one person with one brain or one person with one technique because you can start sharing and understanding, and they can be get good deputies around the place as well.
Exactly.
But I do, silo mentality, as it's known, is very much there. And I actually have worked in factories where people are proud that they work in the office and they've never been in the factory. And I'm one of these people that actually have worked hard to try and change that mindset because they might be in procurement. They need to know what that ingredient is doing in the factory that they keep buying.
Yeah. I think your techniques that you're using here and how it can be applied, when we talk about developing a positive food safety culture, and we say, well, how do we go about that? Is there a tool to do it? You know, this kind of thing that breaks down barriers and gets people communicating, working together, learning together is what developing culture's all about. Yeah. You don't need a manual. You don't need a senior executive to do something. All you do need the time. Mm-hmm. And you've got to have allocate time off the job for people, so you've got to invest that time. But apart from that, you just need a bit of energy, enthusiasm, and innovative ideas, and just go ahead and do it.
Absolutely, and there's some really good ideas coming through as well. I saw the one about food terrorism, and I thought, yes, I went on a briefing about that, linked to the BRC7, and food terrorism is one that's absolutely perfect to be included into there, and I didn't even touch on that one. So then there's lots of other ones coming in as well about chill chain management, going back down to commodity levels, and there's things about validation, verification, and foreign bodies. There's all sorts coming in there, and it's quite exciting for me, actually. I want to teach you all. But no, that's fantastic, and I'm going to keep reading through those. But just before I finish off and we go to Q&A, I've just got an opportunity, hopefully, for some of you, if you feel that you're passionate about making sure that you get the right people through in the future, or your particular area of the sector of the industry does. I'm actually doing a survey starting later in the year. And I'm going to work with students, graduates, and employers and start honing down exactly what the food industry wants from the graduates, because we want to ratify it properly, not just for what the University of Nottingham thinks. We want to make sure it's actually where we need to be. We know there's no one answer, but we know there's a range of answers that might be suitable for different sectors and different types of roles. So I'm starting quite a big part of research on that one as behalf of the University of Nottingham, and I'm just starting that process in the autumn. If you want to be involved in that, involved in surveys or focus groups or the research, and some of it's just light touch survey, some of it's a little bit more involved if you want it to be, then please email me. And I know Simon's going to send my email out later with the usual email and contacts, just in case you want to be involved and have your say. It might be because your sector gets ignored. It might be because you have some very strong opinions and you're very experienced, or you just want to be involved anyway because it's part of, you're interested in the whole supply chain. So if you want to be involved and have your say, please email me. I will log your call and say thank you very much, and then I'll get back to you later in the year and involve you, because it to me it's something where I need to involve as many people as possible. And I registered for this webinar long before I started getting the approval to get this research started, but it's such a really timely time for me to send this one out to all of you that are here today. So please do email me, and I will be more than happy to sort of get back to you, and then I will involve you in the surveys if you'd like to involve and have your say in what you think you want. But do I need to do something now? I've forgotten what you told me to do at the end here, Simon. Thank you. And any questions? But
yeah, that's fine. Thanks very much, Emma. Right, you can stop sharing your presentation now.
Okay.
There's no doubt that the students who go through this degree at the University of Nottingham are making a massive difference in businesses all over the world, because they're bound to be oven ready and ready to hit the ground running with their practical knowledge, etc. It's really great, and there's so many ideas. I mean, you can see them still coming in the sidebar now, where people are saying, right, yeah, I could do this problem-based learning within my organisation, and there's nothing to stop you apart from time. Obviously, you need the time. You need to take people off the job. But you just need the energy and enthusiasm to do it, and it is refresher training. I've just put one or two things down. I mean, often auditors audit the documents, don't they? Are people filling in the records properly? Are they doing the checks properly? Why not swing it round? Let the quality team, in a mock scenario, do the record keeping and etc. And let the operators find fault and etc. the other way around. Or job swapping. I've been involved in a project previously where the whole company had an opportunity to go and spend a day. So let's say somebody from one department would go in the printing department and spend a full day with a printer on a print machine, seeing the challenges and the materials that they were producing that were going into the next that they were receiving. And anything that develops that knowledge, cross-functional knowledge, job enrichment, job enlargement, it develops that food safety culture and that mindset, and that can only be good for the business. So a brilliant presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so if attendees have got any specific questions, could you please just type them into the chat box now, and we'll have Emma for a few minutes more to try and answer some of those questions. Yeah, the other thing you said about induction, when somebody comes in as the induction, the PowerPoint, do they really get to see the whole of the company and spend, not just walk through it, spend a day in each department, right from customer service to accounts?
Yeah.
That's a proper induction.
Absolutely. And I think it's about and it's also about applying the understanding of the fact that if they're working in a particular role, then you shouldn't necessarily have a different induction. I think there should be something that there's an equal side to it all for everyone. They're going to be working in finance, they don't need to know as much. Well, yes, I think to start with, they all need to know the same. And then they get built on that from there, because that finance person might end up being key in your traceability. certainly in terms of dealing with the situation, because they're very good with numbers, tracking things through. And I think cross-referencing and looking at the skills in each department rather than saying it's automatically technical is something we should all be striving towards, trying to avoid at all costs. There is one question coming through, isn't there?
Yeah. Paul, I've highlighted that, so that should show at the bottom of the screen for attending.
Got that, yeah.
Yeah. So he's asking.
Okay. Any examples of the output? In terms of output, the final product, in terms of product, I mean, do you think the assessed output? It's a group presentation or it's a report. They have to do a two-page executive summary, I would call it. We don't call it that in university, but that's what I would call it. A two-page what they did and what the impact was, what the risk is, what they evaluated, and what decision they came to, what they would do in the future to stop it happening again. They would do that as a two-page report. And they would do that individually because we assess them for that particular part of the module individually. But the other part of the module, they do, it depends which problem they're dealing with, they do a group presentation, and then that teaches them the group presentation skills on top of everything else they're doing. So they have to share the lectern literally as a group and present and build all that slides together and do it within a very strict timetable. I actually look very sweet, I know, but I'm actually incredibly strict, and I literally cut them dead when they're over time, because I've been at certain retailers and been cut down at certain times, and that's all part of their training. If they've got 10 minutes, they've got 10 minutes. If they've got 15 minutes, they've got 15 minutes. And I would encourage that with you doing that. I think group presentation would be great output for the environment that you're working in, with maybe the general manager or the technical manager or someone else being involved in that to really give it some gravitas and giving them experience in a safe environment about dealing with a presentation in time, instead of doing it first time in front of a major retailer.
Okay, thanks for that. Another question there from Corey. Do you want to pick that one up?
SPC, no. Well, we use that. We do look at process consistency generally. We don't purport to do SPC as a specific tool, but it is included within our food factory operations module, yes. But I did SPC myself when I was in flour milling, and I found it, and also in baking, and I found it quite a useful tool. So yeah, I would agree, it's very good.
Okay, any more questions, ladies and gentlemen, before Emma has to leave us? Would you just like to type in, are you going to apply any of the knowledge that you've learned today? Just yes, no, or maybe, and you can quite easily answer that. And while you do that, I'll just wrap up again. Then it has been a really good presentation, and I do encourage you to contact Emma to get involved with this research that they're doing. That would be really helpful, and I'm sure it'd be helpful to Emma as well. And they're doing a great job there preparing the food safety managers of tomorrow, not just in the UK, throughout the world. So there are some more comments coming in now. I've used HACCP training to enable colleagues to visit colleagues in situ and ask questions to generate the HACCP analysis for presentation. Oh, here we go. That's what we're looking for. Lots of yeses. That's what we want to see.
Fantastic.
So it's a success. So that the 4 E's of this engagement. The fourth one was effective. Has it been effective, this presentation? And I think the answer to that is a resounding yes, because we've got lots of yeses there. What I will do is I'll capture all these comments in the sidebar, and I'll issue these round and paste them into the forum topic related to this webinar, so we can read all them. And if there are some more questions that come in, you'll pick up on them as well, can
yes,
you?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. All right then. We'll end it there. Thanks very much, Emma. It's been great today. I very much appreciate it on behalf of the IFSQN and everybody who's attending today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Okay, ladies and gents, I'm sure you want your certificate for today. So I'll just load that, and hopefully you'll be able to see that in a minute or so. It has been really good today. If you can't get the certificate today, I do follow up with an email, and I send the PowerPoint presentation, the slides from that, the webinar recording in case you missed anything if you came late, and also the certificate. So you do get everything in email, so don't worry. Next week's webinar, allergen management with Ruth Bell, so please do register for that. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. These Food Safety Fridays webinars are absolutely brilliant, and my expectations have been completely smashed today. Emma's done a brilliant job, so thanks to Emma. Thanks to you all for attending and taking part in the polls and the chat. It's been a really good session, very enjoyable. So we'll see you all again next Friday. Have a lovely weekend.